might just be a bandwidth thing. I mean, oh, you know what? I've got an idea. Maybe I've got some things open I can close. It might help my bandwidth on this end, and therefore maybe it'll help help the screen fidelity on your end. All right. So let's get started. So how's everyone doing today? I hope you are all well. It looks like we're not going to get Pierce. He just keeps getting kicked out. So he works for a big evil company. So this is going to be a drawing demo. We're going to basically, I'm going to draw, use this time to sort of show you guys some of my drawing methods using traditional media, using pencils. I may even get some time to do a little bit of pen and ink, but just kind of show you guys generally my process when using traditional drawing media. Now, I just sent everyone a link to a documentary that the BBC did. I think it's part of a series, but this particular one was on drawing. I started watching it. I got about halfway through it. It's really, really fascinating. Very, very interesting. I recommend that you guys take a look at it, because it basically talks about the importance of drawing, and how, you know, it's a much more primal art. It's a much more direct form of artistic communication, where it's like the artist's subconscious and direct ideas are coming right out onto the paper. And it just sort of backs up a lot of what my thoughts are about how to use art and drawing to develop ideas, to develop, you know, interesting ideas, and to develop ideas that come from sort of a primal part of your brain, your subconscious. You're tapping into all these all that sort of inner library of imagery that we all have in us, and so I'm glad someone's finally, you know, sort of backing up what I've always believed in a much more intellectual way than I can. But I recommend that you guys watch it. So I'll start. I'm going to start talking about sketchbooks and how I sketch using sketchbooks. I used to use. Hang on one second. I used to use these kinds of sketchbooks, sort of larger. These larger ones, which are 9 by 12 Canson paper. You can see this one actually got crushed on the street by a car, or actually several cars. Several cars ran over this because I left it on top of my. When you have a child, and you have to put things down a lot to get them, you know, in the car seat. And I had put the sketchbook on top of the car, put my son in his car seat, and then I drove off, and the thing flew off the back of the car onto the street, on the busy street in Baltimore. And I saw it in the rearview mirror, and I ran out into the street to. I sort of stopped traffic. Ran out in the street and, stop, very dramatically, and, ran over my sketchbook. And I think there's a page somewhere in here that it had flipped open. Let me see if I can find the page. The book had flipped open, and there was a giant tire mark. Here it is. There's a tire mark right there on this page here, a page of notes. See, there's only a page of notes. So, but yeah, so now exactly. So now the book has character. But anyways, I used to use these sketchbooks a lot, just because I like the size and so I'm able to do multiple compositions on a page. But I was finding it to be a little too unwieldy. It was kind of a pain in the neck to take with me everywhere. So I I decided just this year when I was finished with my last sketchbook, I decided that I was gonna try something new and try these moleskins that everybody raves about. And it just so happened I had a bunch of these left over um, from my previous employer, Big Huge Games. When our game Reckoning shipped, they had a bunch of these made up special custom moleskin sketchbooks for the entire staff. You can see the Reckoning logo down here, and this is a symbol I designed for the game. And so they had a bunch of these made up, and so when our company went kaflooey, I grabbed a handful of these, even though I really didn't use moleskins. Um, so I have a bunch of them now, and I'm like, well, I should get them. And what's nice about these, the ones that they had made for us, is that they've got these nice thick pages of paper instead of the thinner, flimsy ones. So I liked that, and I liked the quality of paper. I just wasn't sure about working this small. But the advantage of working this small, or having a sketchbook this small, is I can put it in my pocket essentially, or my jacket pocket if I need to. But then I did this thing where I took I took some Velcro straps and put them on the back, and I added Velcro to the back of my phone and to my pencil, my eraser, and my pencil, right, and even the sleeve for this eraser. Okay, and then what's cool is a kneaded eraser. I should just stick right on there as well. And now I have all this stuff. I just take this with me wherever I go, and it's all. Whoops. Well, it usually does. It stays on. Here we go. There. See. Well, it was a little bit of a fail there. I didn't push it down. So anyways, this is great because I always have my sketchbook with me and I always have my phone with me. So if I've lost one, I've lost both. But if I remember the one, I remember the other. Plus my drawing tools and stuff. So this has been a really big help, and it's been a big advantage for sketching. And so I'm glad I did it. And then I've gotten used to working on the smaller pages. So you can see, I'm kind of breaking up the pages differently now. Instead of 4, compositions on each page, I'm kind of doing, whatever kind of comes now. So I'm doing more horizontal compositions as well. And sorry, my goal is to try to fill one of these every year. So I'm really liking it. I just like the quality of the paper. So just to show you, so I use these mechanical pencils. This one's wrapped in Velcro. Let me see if I have one that isn't. They are Alvin .3 Draftmatic pencils. They use .3 leads. I use Pentel Super .3 B leads. That's it's a little bit dark, it's like a darker, it's sort of in between. And you can't really get any darker. I think they make 2Bs for .3, but that's probably as dark as you can get for a .3 lead. That's really, really small. It's very, very tiny lead. I've just gotten used to drawing that way. I mean, I'll show you drawing with some other types of pencils, but I've just gotten used to drawing with a tiny lead, and I prefer it now. And I can still cover a lot of area. I just have to, move it around and build up the values. Can everyone see this? Is this is this close enough for you to see what I'm doing? Okay, good. So basically, I'm just showing you here working on something I've already started. I'll show you like starting from scratch as well. But like with anything, with any kind of art, it's sort of about building things up in stages, right? Like you can see I have like rough sketch areas in some parts, and then other areas where I've started to go in and refine the details. But you know what I'm not doing is I'm not focusing only on one area at a time. I'm kind of I'm moving around it and squinting my eyes, and or letting my eyes go out of focus in order to see how the values are coming along. Doing more value work in my pencil drawings is something I've been doing a lot lately, or I've been doing more of lately. Um, and so I'm doing sort of a combination of lines and hatching, and also just sort of shading by creating a flat edge with the lead, by sort of angling the pencil. After a while, you get kind of a flat lead or a flat side. Oh, bye, Kurt. Sorry, you've got to go. Um, anyways, what? Oh, who left? Oh, Diogo left. All right. Oh, gotcha. All right. Sorry. So anyways, just trying to think more about value and lighting now in my pencil sketches, putting more of that information into the piece. But again, I don't really start getting into that stuff until I'm kind of happy with the composition, right? It has to have to feel as if I'm on the right track. I'm on the right course before I really get into defining the details and the values, the tones, right? You can see like this one's got a few different stages. It's sort of lightly sketched in over here, and then over here I'm getting a little more deliberate. But how do I start something like this? I mean, it's basically like for me, it's really just about starting somewhere, right? Like I don't even necessarily, in fact, most of the time I don't really have an idea in mind of what I'm going to draw. I'll just start with a box, and I don't use a ruler or anything. I just do as good of a job as I can making a box. Um, you know, Sometimes I redraw it if it's a little off. Oh, I just made it worse. That's cool. But it doesn't really matter. I'm just giving myself some place to work within. Um, and I just I can maybe think about stuff that is interesting to me, or I could just start moving my pencil, right, and see what happens. Which is generally the case. It's generally what happens. But I like to kind of what I'm sort of doing is I'm just creating shapes and hoping that eventually I start seeing something there, and all the things that are influencing me that day, or maybe something that I just recently watched or read, will come immediately to mind, and will start to manifest itself um, on the page. So I'm sure that looks very light to you right now. There's some way I could. So I don't really have a lamp over here. I have to move my lamps. Uh, but I'm just going to kind of draw for a bit and see if something happens. I mean, I might start thinking of something or seeing something, and I can kind of move it in that direction. But if it doesn't really work, or if it starts to feel like it's not going to work, I can change it and erase parts out and try something else. Some sort of large creature. My son's been into dinosaurs a lot lately, so you know, I've been it's been on my mind a lot, dinosaurs. But I just finished a piece for the book, and it has these huge walking like land creatures, and I've just been sort of fascinated. I think because of the dinosaur stuff and that piece, I've just been kind of fascinated recently about the idea of sort of really huge animals, huge creatures. Um, oh, and I also recently watched Empire Strikes Back with my son, and I remember it reminded me of how much as a kid I really loved those AT-ATs, the walkers, the giant walkers. That was like my favorite thing, and I still can vividly remember the day I got my AT-AT toy for my birthday. I was just, I was over the moon, right? So I like this idea of these huge creatures. So I'm wondering, think kind of moving in that direction. But then the question is, how will you know what's the context for the size, and how will I show scale? So you see, I'm moving around. I'm not agonizing over things, and I think that's one of the main problems with when we're starting off drawing, and the thing that often can get us hung up is we start to agonize over stuff, and we think, how am I going to make this look like a house? And now I've got to draw this house over here. I just draw a shape. I just draw a lump, right? And eventually, after working it up and going back over it, that's why you start light. You start with a very light touch, and then over time you can build it and build it into something. But the key is to get the shapes and the negative space to be interesting first, you know, and then you can figure out how to make it into a building second, right? Because I know what a lot of you guys are doing is you're like, you're being very compartmentalized in your thinking. You're saying this is okay. There's got to be a building here. It's going to have a roof. I got to put some windows in it. Oh, it's going to have a front door. Like how am I going to, where is that going to go? And is it in perspective and all that? Don't worry about that. Just figure out the silhouette. Figure out where you want the building to go and why, and what else could potentially be around it. And once that works, then you can worry about all the other stuff later. Um, so it's about approaching your drawings in the right stages with the right mindset, because you could spend a long time getting all the details right in that building, and then you sort of lean back from the piece and you look at it and you go, well, shit. I mean, the building kind of doesn't work in that space. It doesn't, it kind of ruins the composition, or it's hiding an important thing, or it's completely out of scale, you know. Um, so you just kind of have to work loosely and work towards the right goals at the right time. I love those pictures of like the elephants that have there's like you know towers or baskets on their back with people riding in them. I've always loved that kind of stuff. Thinking maybe something along those lines. When you're doing this, when you're drawing, you should be having fun too, right? You should be thinking about how to make it fun for you. How to express the ideas that that you're interested in expressing. Not how will I please the masses, you know, how will I do something that's commercially successful? Um, that's you know that's just going to result in it's just going to give you bad results. It's going to give you disingenuous design. How much are you drawing people and things you see in public, not fans and things? I don't do it as much as I should. Um, uh, but I try to do it as much as possible. I mean, lately it's been cold as hell here, and so I haven't really been doing much life drawing. Um, but when I was starting out, that's what I mostly did. Or I filled sketchbooks with life drawings, or half life drawings, half imagination stuff. I mean, I've always been more drawn to drawing from the imagination, but in order to have material to work with and to draw from for your imaginative stuff, for your imagined realities, you have to observe the real reality, as well, and a source for your ideas. Find sources for your ideas. I also take a lot of mental pictures. Um, I'm not claiming to have a photographic memory, but because I'm an artist, and we all are too, we think in pictures, we think in visuals. So I tend to try to remember things, visual things, as best I can, and then jot them down in my sketchbook. Do I ever start with a words list when generating ideas for drawings? Um, I haven't done that with my personal work. I think we've definitely done that before with various game jobs, when brainstorming for ideas. We start with lists of words and ideas generated in brainstorming meetings. But I haven't really done it in my personal work that I can think of. Um, so, anyways, just trying to keep it pretty loose. Um, but giving myself enough of an indication of where I'm interested in taking this piece, so that I can sort of check it at all stages. I'm feeling like that stuff in the background is kind of competing with him, so I'm going to drop the horizon down here a bit. Still have some buildings there, but not have them compete so much with his silhouette. Again, I had no idea what I was going to draw before I started drawing this, but again, I had just ideas in my head of things that right now are kind of on my mind, and that are exciting me, or sort of itching to get out there. How often do you have bad days? Do you ever have a day you not feel like drawing? And so, what do you do? Um, uh, do you want to know? I mean, so I hesitate to answer that question, because I don't want I don't want this to sound like I don't want to sound like I'm telling you that there's something wrong with you if you have days where you feel like you don't want to draw. But I honestly don't. I don't have days where I don't feel like drawing. And that's why I know that this is the job for me, right? In fact, I feel bad on days where I haven't gotten to draw much. I mean, it's part of the reason why I took a job where I took a job as a concept artist where I had to draw every day, pretty much, right? I mean, obviously there are some days where it just doesn't happen for whatever reason. You're doing stuff with family, or you've got you business stuff to take care of, or you've got just other life obligations. Sometimes prevents prevents you from having the ability to draw every day. But that's why I also am trying to be much more disciplined about having my sketchbook with me at all times, because you know, even if you're doing, even if you're preoccupied with other stuff that's non-art related, I usually find that there's usually 10 or 15 or 20 minutes here and there in the day where you're sitting and waiting for something. You're waiting in line for something. You're waiting for somebody to finish what they're doing, or whatever. So having the sketchbook handy is just just allows you to utilize that time properly. So that's the honest answer. I mean, I you know, I'm not saying that you can't have bad days. I'm not saying. I mean, I've had bad days for sure. I mean, that's why I developed this kind of this drawing method where, like, I don't even need to have an idea or be inspired necessarily to start drawing. I can just start moving my pencil around, and sometimes they don't really work out. I mean, you know, um, I don't. I thought I had this really cool idea for these kind of like magic tech um, construction vehicles based off of things that we do, that we have in our world, and I don't know, this kind of just fell flat. And other times, when I don't, when I'm not really getting anything, sometimes these drawings might end up as just kind of like abstract things, and that's good too, right? I mean, it's not a bad thing to experiment with abstractions, because as long you're dealing with shapes and um, you know getting getting better at recognizing and understanding how to balance interesting shapes is all part of the process, is all part of the skills that that make for a good concept artist. I mean, honestly, I'm not crazy about where this is going either. Uh, but it may take some work, and maybe just that I'm not great, that I'm not really digging the head or something. Um, Actually, to tell you the truth, the real reason I'm not digging this is because I keep looking at it on my screen and I see it flipped, and I'm not liking the way it looks flipped. That's the one thing I'm actually really bad about, is flipping my artwork. So, I think a lot of times what happens is my work looks a little skewed or lopsided, because I think most of us have like a slant or a lean to our drawings, and I don't like flipping my work and seeing that. I know I'm supposed to, and it's the right thing to do. It's the good artist, the good and disciplined artist thing to do, is to flip your drawing, to check to make sure that it's working, because that's where you see like the kind of idiosyncrasies of your or the inconsistencies rather of your drawing. But I hate doing it, because sometimes it means that you know it's not working like I thought it was, and I've got to work harder on it. So, all right, more questions. Let's see. How do you keep your drawings so clean when you draw on both sides of the page? Um, well, I don't really. I mean, if you were to see this, you'd see there's actually a lot of smudging going on. Um, and look at all this. There's all kinds of crap in the middle of here, and so it's not that clean. Um, but if you look through here, you'll see. And I should be better about spraying my pages, because this is actually quite smudgy, when you get up close. But yeah, I should be using fixative, um, and I promise I'll get better about doing that. But I'm just not. I'm sort of undisciplined in that respect. So. Uh, I mean, this is kind of smudgy too. If you look up close, if it would ever focus, maybe not. Well, anyways, Uh, oh yeah, Kurt, that's the drawing. That's the original drawing that I did in my sketchbook for the cover piece to the Book of Wizards. Where did it go? So that was really the piece that kind of kicked off the idea for the book. And again, I'll tell you the way this piece came about was on a day where I had gone to the aquarium with my son, and uh, I watched a Harry Potter movie. So there's a scene in Harry Potter in the movie that there were all these wizards standing around in an alleyway, and they all kind of look the same. And I was thinking about the aquarium and how fish all have they have this great variety and to them. And so I said, well, why can't I would like to recreate that scene only with more interesting characters. No, I did not redraw this on illustration board. I just scanned this directly out of my sketchbook and used that as the basis for the final painting. So, all right. So, anyways, that's sketching in a sketchbook, right? So, I'd probably continue to work on this some more. Um, so the other thing I draw on is this stuff called layout bond. It's Borden and Riley number 39 chalk white layout opaque bond. I can't find it in stores anymore. I actually have to order it online. The reason I like this paper is because it's lightweight. It's not heavy. I use this for sketching ideas, for sketching multiple ideas, like for concept art, for game jobs. Excuse me, I'm just having some coffee. Anyways, and there's a slight, there is a slight, what's the word I'm looking for? Translucence to the paper. You can see through it just a little bit. So if you needed to kind of put it on a light table and use that and draw, to trace something underneath, you could. And then plus it just has it has a nice fine grain or tooth to it that I kind of like. And I feel as if I can go through a lot of this paper and not feel as if I'm wasting really good paper. But yet it is, but it's strong enough that it's not like using tracing paper or like newsprint, which I think just is really cheap and doesn't really always give you, I think, the result that you need. So this is what I use for a lot of sort of like my concept art sketch development. Give me 1 second. I'm going to go just grab some examples. So these are some examples of the kind of stuff I would do sort of for work, right, on that kind of paper. Sketching out multiple ideas for creatures, characters, buildings, weapons, right? So this is generally how I start all of my work, is with pencil on paper like this. Actually, this is just on regular printer paper, which I will use from time to time as well. But and to tell you the truth, some of my latest drawings are on printer paper as well. And the way I did these was, and you can kind of see it. Well, here you'll see it here. What I do is I printed out. I had a rough sketch, and you can kind of see it ghosted there. I have a rough sketch underneath that I have scanned. I scanned it in from my sketchbook, and I printed it out very lightly on the printer paper, and now I'm going in and sketching over it. But you can get the same effect by using a light table with this other paper that I've mentioned. But that's the way I did these kinds of drawings. Now, what you'll see, the one thing you'll see, the difference here is that as I was talking to you about this earlier, I'm doing a lot more tonal, a lot more value work now in my drawings. So this is kind of how I used to draw, and I still do to some degree. It's mostly line, and now I'm doing a lot more building up of tone, right? Um, so what I'm going to do is, and again, you can see the ghost did kind of a rough sketch underneath this one as well. And then what I do is I scan it in, and I kind of erase out some of that old stuff, the artifacting. But then I still have a nice original drawing here that, actually, I sold this drawing. Sold this to Peter Moorbacher, artist friend of mine. So this one's no longer available. Okay, so I'm going to work on this piece here, and I'm just going to kind of show you how I used my pencil to work up details. Okay, now let's see if I can get the camera any closer to. See if there are any questions here. My problem is I need to get this kind of stuff online so I kind of know what I'm ordering. Can't go around and touch the paper. Oh yeah, no, that's true. If you don't have any stores around you, that can be hit or miss. It's like you order stuff online and you just hope for the best. So, all right, the camera's going to get a little shaky here for a second. I got to move it back. Okay, hopefully that will stay. Stay, camera, stay. Here, hang on. There we go. Okay. Now let me see if I can get it closer. Everyone still with me? Everyone still awake? Oh. The answer is no. Hey everyone. So I'm not really sure what happened there. It's like I lost my connection for a second. Do you guys know what was the last thing you heard me talking about? Oh, okay. All right, so it wasn't that much lost info. Okay. Sorry, I just need to be able to lean over the paper here. So, so basically, now that I've got that, because I have that ghosted image behind this drawing, I can work, confidently on the drawing, right? Like I don't have to worry about proportions and stuff. I'm already kind of happy with the proportions. Although, again, I'm seeing him flipped, and I'm seeing some things that I probably need to adjust. But at this stage, it's kind of, I mean, I don't know really what to say other than, it's just about starting to build up the layers of the drawing, right? You can work on an outline, try to keep things pretty light at first, and then you can kind of lightly put in your details, and then you can kind of go in and darken them up in certain areas to show the depth, or shadows, or how light would sort of affect those details, right? And what I do is I'm constantly like unfocusing my eyes. I find that's a better way than squinting. First of all, squinting, I think, really strains your eyes after a while, and I get headaches when I squint too much. So instead, I just kind of unfocus my eyes. I let my eyes sort of go unfocused, and then I can more clearly see where I need to build up value and tone. Um, and sometimes I just build it with hatching and then cross hatching. I'll hatch one direction and hatch the other direction, and fill, and and sort of continuously build up the layers of hatching that way. Um, but I find unfocusing your vision is a great way of seeing your image, the tonal value of your drawing. Is this helpful at all to you guys? Just giving you some ideas. Um, Patterning is one of those things that you have to study and look at a lot of different patterns to understand what's going on. One of the things that was kind of a little revelation for me about patterning and filigree and embroidery is that a lot of that kind of stuff is actually naturalistic, like plant shapes, and it sort of follows some of the rhythms of plants and vines and flowers, and it's something I don't draw a lot of. So, you know, in some ways it was an advantage when I started sort of making up my own patterning, because my patterning kind of was unique and looked different than stuff that you typically see. But at the same time, what I was lacking was that idea of sort of a rhythm. And so I tried to do more studies of actual patterns and patterning, to understand how rhythms and sort of the composition of patterning and the purpose of it. Could you draw a small two-story mountain cabin? You want me to help you plan your mountain retreat? Well, actually, I do have something. So I just wanted to show you a little bit of that. I do have something that I'm going to work on that's more of a architectural space. Um, but I mean, you know, okay. So people want to know about a couple different things. So perspective. Um, you know, so what can I say? I mean, obviously the best way to learn perspective is to learn how to do it right first, and then throw it all out eventually, right? So I learned how to do the whole 1 point perspective and 2 point perspective thing back in the day, but now I'm not as exacting about it, because what it ends up doing in my mind is it ends up kind of like stiffening the piece, and it can often, I think, it can have sort of bad results and make an image feel too stiff, right? So instead, I try to just use what I've learned about perspective, but sort of approach it more naturalistically. So, if I'm drawing a building, I kind of think in general terms about the perspective, about the how how I'm looking at the building. Am I looking up at it? Am I sort of looking right down the middle of it? And I try to plot very loosely, these lines. And you can kind of loosely plot lines that are moving towards one another, right? Moving towards a point. And really, that's all that's required for something to look right to most people. Sure, you might get into it a little bit more, or you might get look closer, and suddenly realize that some of the lines aren't quite exactly right on. But as long as the general impression is correct, that's all that really matters, for the viewer to have that suspension of disbelief, right? And when I've drawn these kind of like rough guidelines, I kind of know just about anywhere where my lines are going to fall, right? Um, so I'll just draw here for a while. Sometimes it's hard to talk and draw at the same time. So this is sort of 2-point perspective, right? Horizon line being probably somewhere around here. But the one thing that you have to remember, though, is that not everything is built at right angles to one another, right? So it's possible I might have, this building that's on the road. And the best way to imagine this is imagine the road, right? If the road is straight, then the buildings that are facing the road, are going to be in line with that perspective. But what if the road turns, right? It starts going, you know, going off in a different direction, right? So now you have new perspective, right? And your buildings are going to start going down towards that vanishing point. It's a different vanishing point, right? And so therefore, this is of a different vanishing point too. It's going to be this side of the building is going to be way out here, right? So the best way to do that is just to visualize the road, right? And then there might be something in between. Maybe there's something that's in between that's kind of like it's not following the perspective of either of those buildings. It's something in between. It's kind of a halfway in between perspective, right? Or it's slight turns, a half turn in between that. And again, I might not get it perfect, but if it's close enough, then it'll probably work, right? Having a nice big kneaded eraser is great for this kind of stuff. Having one of these kinds of erasers, a mechanical one, is great for erasing out very specific lines and very specific details. But that doesn't generally come till later. And you can start to kind of like solidify some of your lines once you're pretty sure that you're on the right path, right? But if I had gone too dark with these lines too soon and committed to them too soon, then I might be in trouble. I might have to do a lot of erasing, right? So don't commit to your lines too soon. Work out the whole composition, work out the whole thing first, right? So if you get a building on the other side, so that's going to be kind of like that, right? So yeah, I think perspective can be an intuitive thing, and it should be an intuitive thing. I think you're going to get better results when you have an intuitive approach to it. Just remember that everything has a vanishing point, but not everything has the same vanishing point. So this is all screwed up. You see, I'm jumping around. That's the other thing is right. No, don't make any commitments and jump around. You know, to jump around the piece. Uh, Tip number one: follow the road. Tip number two: make no commitments. That's good. Right. Not to be quoted out of context. Correct, Kurt. You're absolutely right. Um, but you're not writing a book, are you? You're not going to steal these ideas and then write a book. I need some credit. Can I get a little bit of a kickback? So, anyways, once you have stuff that's kind of in perspective, everything can kind of be built from there. Everything should be a reference to the last thing, right? And all it requires is to just kind of step back from it every now and then. Move your hand out of the way, right? Look at what you're drawing. Make sure it works. Okay. So anyways, that's a little bit of perspective there. Marion, did you have you had a specific question about something? I think it was about texture, right? Were you wondering about creating texture, Marion? Oh, leather texture. That's right. Okay. Let's see here. All right, so how do you create texture with a pencil? Well, by the way, just so you know, I want to show you a couple other things that you can use. You know, if you still want to use a pencil like this, you know, obviously that's fine. You know, I still have pencils like this, but you know, it's good to get a nice point to it and to keep your pencil sharpened. And you know, again, a lot of people when they work with pencils like this will use the flat end to build up value. Um, you know, I don't generally work that way a lot, but you know, if you're more comfortable that way in sort of defining your values early on, then by all means, you know, do that. Because you know, ultimately, what it comes down to is how are you most comfortable working, right? And what gets the results that you want. You know, and this is all drawing, what I'm doing here. It's just, you know, sort of slightly different approaches to drawing. Uh, you know, maybe I should start doing more of this kind of thing. Who knows? But I feel like right now, when I have more of a line and hatching approach to things, I get better results um, generally. But you know, the one thing is that occasionally as artists, what we have to do is we have to kind of question again the reasons that we make the decisions we make, and then try, you know, say maybe it's something you gave up 5 years ago, try it again now and see if maybe, you know, suddenly you're better at it, you know, or suddenly you get better results because of something else that you learned. Um, so, so let's talk about creating texture. So I'm going to use actually this bigger pencil for now because it'll be a little easier to see. I'm talking about creating texture. So, I mean, we can just start with leather texture, but you know, the thing about anything is that you got to start with observation, right? But well, let's just pretend we're drawing like just a flap of leather here. Maybe maybe it's overlapping another flap of leather. Um, you know, you just kind of have to, understand the visual properties of something like leather. It has these, when you cut leather at the edges, it kind of does this thing, I think, where, it kind of, uh, um, what's the word I'm looking for? It kind of like flares out right towards the edge. Because it's meat, right? Leather is just, or it's the skin around meat. It's not cloth, right? It's got a different property to it. So when you put a stud into leather, it kind of has this feeling almost as if like the flesh is being sort of pressed down around it, or as it dries and ages, sometimes cracks will form in leather, right? And in fact, leather has a lot of cracks. It's sort of the like the lines in our skin, and they're not regular. They've got some. You can kind of do this sort of randominess to the lines. Some of them might be parallel, others perpendicular, but some might indicate sort of a flow of the grain of your skin, right? And I think when you sort of develop up those lines like that, then you can kind of put a little bit of darker shading in some of the areas to indicate the thickness that the grooves in the leather would have, right? I mean, unfortunately, sometimes the more I do this, the better I'll get at explaining what I'm doing. But there is this sort of intuition, I think, about drawing, and you only get that by doing a lot of drawing, right, and experimenting with things. But I could be doing this with a mechanical pencil as well. I wanted to kind of show you guys, uh, up close. I think a lot of it has to do with this kind of like crackly edges, these sort of cracks in the leather are what really gives leather its look oftentimes, right? Sometimes has sort of these layers that are sort of flaking off. So you kind of create these lines, and then there might be patches where there's sort of pieces sort of flaking off of it. Again, it's a little hard for me to explain, but and again, as you can see, I'm kind of using randomness sometimes to help guide me. I'm just letting the pencil go places, and then when things look right, then I solidify them, right? When things look wrong, I can erase them or ignore them, or leave them sort of lightly drawn, and no one will see them because I'm going in and I'm accentuating the things that are right, and not accentuating the things that are wrong. So that's part of the drawing process is you need to be okay with experimenting in the drawing and making mistakes, and so that's why it's important to draw lightly and to build up your layers and of volume. I mean of tonal values. Um, so that the stuff that doesn't work or the lines that weren't in the right place will just sort of disappear over time, right? The more you build up the drawing. Um, and again, erasers come in handy. This is like a real close-up, right? If you're just drawing you're drawing like a piece of armor on the side of someone's shoulder, and you're saying to yourself you want that to kind of look leathery. You know, start with some random dots, right? Maybe maybe it's patched together, so there's a crease, right? And then you have sort of this stitching that holds it together, and then you can kind of do a little bit of this shading where the stitching, when you do this, when the stitching is created, it kind of pulls at the edges of that leather, but it sort of thickens up right before the leather kind of folds underneath where the stitches are. So you have this sort of thickening that you can indicate by pushing your shading right up to this line right before that stitching, you know. And then you can kind of, again, in other areas, you can sort of indicate these kind of crossing lines like this, which makes it sort of feel a lot more like leather, and then accentuate certain intersections thereof, and then maybe even have like a frayed edge, that's worn down a lot, and maybe you see the metal stud under it, right? So, but a lot of this, will only come from observing these things and drawing these things in real life, and sort of building up that visual memory of your hand. Your hand has memory too. Like when you move your hand in a specific way and it works and it gets you the results that you want, your mind has a way of kind of like capturing the memory of that movement, and storing it away in your data banks. And then you can draw on that, and the more you do it, the more confident you become with that feeling of how your pencil moved. Think about when you're just starting off drawing. A lot of times we do this a lot, right? We're trying to find, it's like I'm trying to draw a head, the head perfectly roundish, so I gotta keep doing this until I get it right. But what ends up happening a lot of times when we draw like that is that it feels stiff and everything. You don't have this nice flow to it. So the more you draw, the more you get used to just trying to draw the line in draw your shapes within as few lines as possible. Just to get that information down, right? The other thing, leather, sometimes, if there's like little blemishes in it, you might have a highlight on it. So if the light is coming from this direction, you can use your eraser to kind of like erase out a highlight on the other side of like a divot in the leather. I don't know if you kind of over exaggerated it, but that kind of gives you more of that textural feel. Does that help at all? I mean, or does that just confuse everyone more? All right. So one other quick thing before we bring this to a close, I wanted to show you guys one other material I would work on sometimes is illustration board. Okay, so here we have like a very rough sketching environment, and I think a lot of you were talking about like the difficulty of going from something that's rough into something that's more refined, and how do you start getting in there and creating the details and stuff. And again, I'll use a large pencil here to just describe this process. But if you're working on something like this where you can't really print out on this because it's too thick, I mean you can, but I haven't really tried it with my printer. and you can't really um, excuse me, you can't really project light through it because it's thick illustration board, right? So what do you do in this kind of case where you've got to work out a rough drawing here, and maybe you got a little dark in some areas? Well, some people use these non-photo blue pencils, but the only problem with these is if you want to then go and paint over this, like with watercolor or something like that, I think the non-photo blue pencils kind of mess things up. So instead, that's why you should have a nice kneaded eraser, because what you can do is once you've worked on your drawing and you're happy enough with the composition. I mean, I would probably work on this a little more, but let's just say you're cool with it at this point. Then you can kind of do this thing where you can start to use your eraser to erase out lines that you don't need, or to just very lightly kind of press your eraser down on the drawing and it picks up some of that pencil lead, right? And now you have a more of a ghosted drawing, and then you can kind of go in and pull out your lines and correct these lines with more confidence, knowing that the composition is right, and you don't have to worry about the composition at this point. So now you can go in to the details, right? Oh, I know. I wanted to also show you guys about ellipses, because ellipses are some of the hardest things to draw, especially drawing them in perspective. I mean, and I'll show you kind of what I do. Again, it's something I do mostly intuitively. But if you want to really learn how to draw ellipses properly and in perspective, get any DVD again by Scott Robertson. He does a lot of DVDs, Nomon workshop DVDs, where he shows, like how he draws cars in perspective. And even if you're not going to draw cars, it's really great to watch because you get some great ideas about how to solve certain problems, perspective and ellipses, and drawing different types of shapes and patterns in perspective. It really is like just breathtaking watching him do this, and just by watching it, you feel like you can draw better. So I recommend any of his videos, but especially try to find the ones where he shows you how he does car drawings. So that's how I would go in and kind of sorry if it was off screen there for a second. I would go in and refine this. And the thing is that there's some areas that you kind of left unsure. You can kind of, again, do that same. You can go back and kind of rough something in, and then once you're happy with it, go back to your eraser and kind of ghost it out, and then go in with a more confident, cleaner line. Also, don't always, you don't always need to fall in that trap of drawing a line around everything. I mean, sometimes the best way to draw is to draw the interior things, the interior lines of things. And what I mean by that is, like for instance, you're drawing a window. Sometimes this is all you need to do to draw a window. You've just drawn like the shadow of the inside of the window frame, right? And you don't really have to draw the bottom and the side. You can just basically indicate that window simply by drawing the shadows on the back side. It's totally not in perspective, but anyways, yeah. All right. So let me just do a quick thing about ellipses. Go on the back of this. So the best way to think about drawing an ellipse, especially in perspective, is to draw a square in perspective first. Okay, that would essentially bisect or intersect the ellipse that you're trying to draw. And this is kind of like one of the simplest ways you can do it, right? So this isn't great, but say I got this square that's in perspective, okay? And then you can kind of, you could do this more technically, but you can just kind of like generally plot out the center lines, okay? And then drawing your ellipse, your circle inside of that will be much easier, right? In theory, okay? Obviously, you'd want to draw these the guidelines for the square a lot lighter, But okay, square, center lines. Now you can, and you'll know that the circle should hit that center line. It should intersect here, 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 and here, right? And because you know that, you can then kind of more confidently draw that circle, right? You can do one inside of it as well, and then that's easier to then draw that, right? I mean, this isn't perfect, but you know, um, Scott Robertson has these ways of being able to plot these points as well, and trying to see if I can remember what it was. Well, there's some way, I believe, to plot these points so that you can get kind of a much more accurate circle. But you can see just like you know, just with simple guidelines. Yeah, so if you're drawing like the wheel of a car, right? Here's the axle, it meets the point here. That's the center point. You can sort of plot that out in every direction, and then you kind of have a better idea of how to draw the wheel in perspective. But here's the thing about doing, like, let's say, so I see this a lot, right? I'm going to draw I'm going to draw a tower, okay, and it's a round tower, and then at the top of it, you do this, okay. Problem is, this isn't a proper ellipse. This is just a curved line. So when you do this, essentially, if you were to look at this from above, it would probably look more like this, right? If you were looking at this from top down, you'd have this kind of half moon shape, right? You want the full circle, right? So how do we do that? What you have to remember is that where this line, this vertical line, meets the circle or the curvature of the ellipse, the ellipse is going to be on its way turning back. It's going to be about to turn back this direction. So it helps to kind of draw the ellipse through, right? And then draw the line right up to that edge, or draw the whole ellipse first, even if you're not going to see the other side, and then draw that line right up to the edge, and you'll see the difference, right? Now it looks more like a cylinder and less like a thing, like a half moon thing that's just cut off like that, right? So once you've drawn that, and again, if we're looking up at this, the perspective of this, then you can erase that back line, and now the top of your tower should make more sense, and then you can draw, the roof on top of it, right? So that makes sense to everybody too. So remember, Gotta make sure that that circle looks like it continues around, right? Do it one more time. Same if it's like something that's sort of halfway down the tube, right? To make it look like it's going to continue around that curve. And then obviously as you get more towards your eye line, it becomes a shallower and shallower um, ellipse. But as you go up and the thing recedes further and further away from you, the more it becomes a circle. So as this comes down here, eventually our eye line would meet with it, and it would be a straight line, right? Okay, so that's the drawing demo. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And again, if you have any ideas for more demos going forward, just let me know. Some of you may have seen this on my Facebook page. I am at the end of next week. I'm going to be flying to Tel Aviv for a freelance contract gig, doing some game art. And I realized that my first week in Tel Aviv is going to be the last week of the class, but I'm going to make my best effort to make sure that I continue to give you guys the materials and do the lectures for the last week as planned. Of course, because the time difference, it might be at different times of the day. It might be more convenient times of the day, frankly. And I'm gonna, I'll have my laptop. I'll have a laptop with me with Photoshop, and so I'll still be able to do the demos. So it shouldn't interrupt anything. But if for some reason things get dragged, an extra week, or into the week beyond the 6th week, I don't assume that's going to be a huge problem with anybody, especially since a lot of you are a little bit, some of you are behind on the assignments and stuff, and plus it would just give you some more time to work on the assignments anyways. But just warning you guys about that. But again, I am going to try to stick to the schedule as best I can. So yeah, so that's that. Thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you guys have a great day. And I'll see you tonight, hopefully, for the interview with Tara.